Well, today was my semi-annual transplant clinic day. It went just as normal. You go in for blood work, then you go in for x-ray, echo, EKG, and then on to see the doctor. No heart cath today, which that's always a relief when you don't have to deal with that, heart cath and biopsy. So I was glad to do that. The only thing that was different about today is that when I went in for my echocardiogram, instead of taking about 45 minutes, which may be long or short to some of you, mine took about an hour and a half. And that's because they started today, and I don't know that they've done it before, but they started today, at least with me, to doing it with and without contrast. Now, many of you already may have experienced that. To be honest with you, I've heard of it, but I've never seen it done until today. So basically, they ran the echo through one time, then they turned around, put an IV in, which took 2 shots, 2 sticks, got the IV in, and then went ahead and did it with contrast. Now, what they told me and explained to me then was that they'd be able to better see the heart walls and such as that, see the thickness of them, and in particularly, if need be, see any clotting that may be inside of the heart itself or any of the main arteries or vessels going in and out of it. Now, it's not something I'm necessarily at risk at, but it's just something they decided to start doing at UAB for the majority of their transplant patients. So when they asked me if I was willing to do that, I went ahead and said yes. You know, I want the best exam I can get every time I go. For example, many of you are already participating in the AlloMap program, and I'm not against the AlloMap for checking for rejection, but honestly, if I had my choice between the AlloMap or the cath and biopsy, I want the cath and biopsy. Now, I know many will argue with that. I know the dangers of the cath, but I like the idea of guys and doctors going in, looking hands-on, doing the test right there live, real time, and getting some quick results. But I'm not saying I'm against AlloMap, and I may do it one day, but to this point, I kind of like the cath. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So thereafter, my all of my checkup and all, went in to see the doctor, made a few complaints, just little bitty stuff, not even going to get into that. I started my day of visiting, which I like to do after my transplant clinics anytime that I can, if I feel like it, as well as if I've got just a little bit of time. So I started that out back in the waiting room there around the clinic, which I like to do, and I met up with 3 different patients, 2 of which were brand new to me. I didn't know them. One of them is only about I think it was 3 or 4 weeks outside of transplant. So it was great to talk to him and his wife, get to answer a few questions of theirs, get to know them just a little bit, make contact, give them a card. Maybe we'll get in touch with each other later on social media some other way. This man happens to be 60 some odd years old. I think he told me he had a 36-year-old heart. So he was claiming to feel really good because of that. I don't know if that makes any difference, but I'm with him. I'm pulling for him. Anything that makes him look good and feel good, which he was both. He did look good. No doubt about it, especially for his age, to just had a transplant so recently. Then I met another person right next to that. As a matter of fact, the lady interrupted our conversation, which I'm glad she did, to say, hey, I hate to interrupt, but my husband had a heart transplant 8 months ago. And she told me a little bit about him. So of course did the same with her, answered a few of her questions and moved on. But I had already on one occasion, and then second, met up with a friend of mine, Traci Holt. Now, Traci Holt happens to be from my hometown. She's waiting on a heart and liver transplant, which is kind of a weird combination, but I saw Traci there, spent a good bit of time talking with her, just really discussing life as it is, especially she's been waiting now about 6 months. So, Traci, if you're watching this, this is your shout out. You just keep staying stronger. You've got this. Also bumped into in the elevator, as well as a couple more times in clinic and around the hospital, Stan Smith. Stan Smith is a friend of mine from Facebook world, and as well as he happens to be the president of our support group, the UAB support group. So good to bump into Stan. He's a tremendous encourager to so many of us. And he does a lot of good work keeping newsletters out there, as well as keeping organized, just so much information and helping to encourage us. So Stan, this is your shout out, and you just stay stronger. You're not a transplant, your wife was, but nonetheless, I appreciate you, Stan. Keep doing what you're doing. And then from that point on, the real highlight of my day even kicked in more as I moved from the clinic over to the HTICU, Heart Transplant Intensive Care, my old stomping ground where I hung out for so long, about 4.5 years ago and prior to that. but I like going there. And generally what I'll do when I get to HTICU is I'll walk in, approach one of the nurses or practitioners, somebody I'll recognize, and ask them if they've got any fresh transplants or people who are waiting for transplant and struggling, because I want to go in and counsel them and you know, give them some information, answer some questions. I didn't recognize anybody, so I go up to the first nurse, ask her for my little scoop, if you will, and she kind of denied me. She said, sorry, we don't have any fresh transplants, which I kind of knew better, but I didn't know where she was going with that. Turns out she didn't recognize me. After I actually introduced myself, which I should have done in the beginning, told her who I was, she backed up, said, oh, I'm so sorry, Jim. I didn't recognize you, which is probably a good thing. Maybe I look better than I did a few years ago. But long story short, I ended up in the room of Andrea Parris. Andrea Parris is a very fresh transplant patient, if you want to call it that. As a matter of fact, all of her trouble started on September the 1st, and I'm recording this on October the 2nd, so a month ago, basically. Her trouble started September the 1st, and then by September the 22nd, she was transplanted. So she went from living a normal life, as a matter of fact, had worked that day, had to take off early to go to the doctor. Fast forward, things went bad. She needed a transplant, and she got it, which is a super, super big blessing. But anyway, Andrea and her mom were just awesome. I mean, spent the time with them that I wanted to. She wasn't feeling very well because she's dealing with a little bit of rejection here post-transplant. Again, being just transplanted on the 22nd. But nonetheless, overall, she's doing pretty good. The thing that was amazing about them is I talked to the mother at length for a while. She had plenty of questions, great conversation. And then as Andrea kind of rose up a little bit from her slumber, which get your rest, Andrea, you need it. But as she kind of rose up, she said, I have a few questions. As a matter of fact, I wrote them down. She pulls out her cell phone and started scrolling through questions. I don't know how many there was, 20, 25 questions, great questions. And she just rapid fire, one after another. Can I do this? Should I do this? How do I react to this? And so forth. Went through the whole list, and I kind of rapid fire answered those questions. And it was just awesome. I mean, I get a lot of questions from transplant patients, but more times than not, I'll be honest, I go in, I talk for a while, I ask them if they have any questions. They're puzzled, maybe confused because I give them a lot of information quickly, and they say, well, not really, and they come up with one or two. She gave me all these questions. She had really been thinking this thing out, and that's good. Education, knowledge, all this stuff is going to be power to you, Andrea. So please, please, please keep on doing that. But I was happy to answer those questions. We exchanged information. Matter of fact, I got her to text me a list of the questions because I'm going to cover some of them on the Transplant Helper pretty soon. Maybe not all at once, but in sections, because so many of those questions I've thought about or not, but I think it would help all of us. So anyway, had a great day, met with all these people, and then from that point, really the big deal for me then was I then was able to go down and see the family of baby McKenna. Now, you know I've talked about McKenna already. I've had a special episode just asking you to pray for her the other day. She's the newborn, basically, that's dealing with transposition of the great vessels or great arteries. She's got to have surgery in the next week or so, whenever that'll be. But I want you to continue praying for her. But I had a great time talking with her mother, Haley, and her grandmother, Michelle. Just great people. I've known Michelle for a long, long time, known her a lot of their family, but it was good to get to see them, good to get hear updates on McKenna. She's doing pretty well. She's had a few issues, but that's all a part of the road that they've got to hoe right now. They're going to make it, but just keep praying for her. So I guess in short, pray for all these people I've named. Pray for Traci, she was one. Pray for Andrea, she's recovering, and certainly pray for baby McKenna. And let me encourage you with this. All I'm trying to get across is, hey, if you've had a transplant or just recovered from any situation, help somebody out. I'm not pointing or tooting my own horn, pointing a finger at me, but help somebody out. It's a good thing, and I promise you it will encourage you, and it'll certainly help you as well as all these people I'm talking about to stay stronger, friends. Hold up, wait a minute, hold the phone, whatever you have to say. I cannot finish this video without giving a great big shout out to ShaCarol Green. ShaCarol Green is someone I met in the transplant unit about a month ago when she was, I think, 4 days outside of transplant. Hadn't seen her since, but I did see her today. She's now about a month out of transplant and doing very, very well. She came up to me first. The very first person to meet me in transplant clinic and say hello was ShaCarol, and so I want to thank you for that. I hope I see you around a lot. I hope you continue to do better, and especially as I tell everyone, and I've already said twice in this video, stay stronger, girl.